Warning and disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed on this live feed are those of the guests, speakers, and/or hosts, and do not necessarily reflect the beliefs, official policies, ethics, or positions of the content providers, advertisers, additional hosts, and/or guests, hosting sites, groups, or entities attached to this programming. Viewer discretion is advised. Hey everybody, welcome to the Barbara Unleashed campaign for the first time ever on Indiegogo. Barbara Unleashed is about a young woman's journey through the New York City underground, the Fetish underground in fact. This is Barbara. She's been through an adventure so far. Barbara's drawn to things that most would not understand or worse, demonize. She's been through a lot to this point. We're now on our third issue of Barbara Unleashed, named Mentor Search. She struggled a little bit, but she's finally found her way back. She knows who she wants to be, and she's out to regain what she feels was stolen from her in Aftermath. And she's finally made her way to where she belongs. Back this project to explore the darker instincts of humans. And remember to give those you care about free spanks and hugs. My name is Mr. Anderson. I am the creator of the project, and I want you to come on this journey and know that the book is not just entertaining, it's not over-sexualized, and it's about BDSM culture and, more importantly, the humans that have fetishes. Thank you for checking out this video. Music provided by Ben Sound. High Octane. Hello and welcome to a special part of the indie event that they have going on this weekend. It is Friday the 13th, so of course I came in to hang. It's been a great week. It looks like a lot of stuff's been going on. Of course, we're pretty excited to be part of the CRYPT week here in 2020. It's Friday the 13th, like I said. We had two guests that were lined up, and something happened to each one of those guests. So for right now, it's just me. But if you guys have any questions about the topic tonight, you're free to ask them and come on the show. We're actually going to have an open mic tonight. I want to have it be a free space where you guys can come on and talk and ask questions if you have any. Free to do that. Happy to be having this conversation. We're going to be talking about a lot. The basic idea for today is Fetish Friday. We're killing, torturing people, and selling the women from on alt covers, storing away the ability to take characters serious most times. Cash grab of sexuality and smut is okay to the general public, but take a topic that deals with sexuality seriously and get up and get your face book being reported and having people make up lies to protect ideas and ideals they don't understand. Comics that show people with a fetish is bad, is something someone would say. Ask them why, and they'll say because it's about sex. And then when you point out that the T-shirt that they are wearing from an animated cartoon series from anime or comic book that is full of sexuality, they're stumped. This is more of an American problem, to be honest with you. So where's the comfort line with sexuality in the U.S.? When is it okay for real humans to talk about sex? And who are the people that get to decide what is and isn't okay? We'll have a conversation about that, and we're going to dive into that. Of course, like I said, if anyone has any comments, we're happy to have them be part of the show tonight. I am going to start off the show introducing myself. For those who don't know, it's a rarity that people actually don't know who I am, because I'm so used to doing this, but of course I'm part of the different events. We're going to switch rooms real quick, and you're going to see the Newswire over there, because I host something called the Comics Newswire, where we talk about comics. It's going to be coming back hopefully next week on Friday. We've had to take some time away because of some really bad weather down here, but this is, I'm not even sure I have a way to, oh no, here it is, the Devil
Mr. Anderson is the unboxable advocating creator known as the Devilish Comics creator who will tempt you with his devilish tales. He creates books about fetish, monsters, and more, and offers free spanks and hugs. He also teaches morals with farts Check out the Comics Devil by going to MrAnderson.com.
All right, so this is, of course, the site for Barbara Unleashed. You guys saw that. It's about a young woman's journey through the New York City fetish underground. We have gotten in nothing but trouble with the art that we've shown on this, and we've fought with Facebook, came back, got the hits taken away, but it's just how people react to this. Now, if I hadn't talked about this being a serious portrayal, no one would ever report this. It's just the truth. I see things on Facebook all the time. I have even seen things get reported, my friends have complained about, that have been allowed to stay on Facebook, that are sometimes horrific, to be honest with you. But if you talk about human sexuality in a way that the general public is uncomfortable with, it becomes a problem. And I think we want to start here with the uncomfortableness of people with human sexuality. Let's start with my banner. So when I go to shows, I have this giant banner, and I'm going to switch back to the other room real quick, and I'm going to show you this banner. And this banner's caused me controversy. A big banner at a Comic-Con that says free hugs and spanks. I always say hugs and spanks, but for the actual the graphic, it says free spanks and hugs because the spanks fit better there. This is something I've literally done. I have spanked people and I've given hugs to people. Spanked men and women, hugged men and women. People have made this is going to somehow, this image here on the screen is going to somehow make children delinquents. These images are going to somehow corrupt the youth. Here's the thing. As an adult, you may very well be looking at it and understanding what a spank is to an adult. To a child who's never been spanked, they're clueless to why a spank even matters. To a kid who gets spanked at home, they don't understand it. They don't understand why someone would want a free spank. Kids don't get the jokes. That's why this was something of a safer way for me to advertise what I was doing. Originally, we used some art. The art no worse than what's around my neighbors. I literally had someone make a comment about the art on my table, and I turned to their table and pointed out something. And I said, yours shows more sexuality. Yours is more sexual in nature than mine is. And they turned around and went, yeah, but she's not tied up. And I was like, but I can go show you covers where people are tied up in comic books that are sold to children. And they don't know what to say because we've been trained that there's something wrong as a human being. And I think that's part of our problem. I think that we have this idea that somehow it's wrong to be okay with human sexuality. I think that's an at least American thing. And if the guest wants to let themselves in, they can. I'm not sure if they're just coming to hang out or actually be part of it. But I guess Meredith does want to come in. Hey, what's going on? Meredith, of course, is putting on this CRYPT week. She's at the end of it. Do you have something tomorrow, or is this the official last night?
This is the official last night, though. There is an interview early in the morning for us East Coasters, but it's afternoon for our friends in England. So we are going to be speaking with a few people from Ashens and the Polybius Heist movie that's coming out very soon, actually next week. So that'll be a lot of fun. But totally off topic and not part of CRYPT week.
Well, I mean, it is. It's part of the CRYPT week. We want the fun to keep going, that we're actually live here. It's the first time I've been live, actually, because of the bad weather and the election. You want scary, the election. Now, that's something scary. But we're talking about also misunderstanding things, speaking of elections. Misunderstanding what America really wants and what it publicly is supposed to say. Because I can't tell you how many times, because I go to cons, I meet people, and one-on-one, it is very easy to talk to people. I've had people who walk up to my table and are like, well, I'm not into fetish. And I'll look really quickly and I'll see them have like a Joker t-shirt on them. So you're into killing people? And what? I was like, you have a homicidal maniac clown on your t-shirt who kills for fun. I was like, so what are we really talking about here? And people kind of stop and they start to realize. And then I've even had the debate about Wonder Woman. For those who only got into comics in the last 5 years, oh boy, is there a lot of history with Wonder Woman that you just don't understand and don't understand why that's so correct. But again, how a simple sign like this can cause controversy. And let me ask you, you've seen the sign before we really got to know each other and we met. You saw the sign. What was your first impression? I always like to hear this from people because I've heard all across the board, from good to bad.
Okay, disclaimer, I am not a normal person. So when I saw it, I was like, all right.
And you know what? I'll be honest, a lot of people, even if they're not into fetish, will stop at my table and giggle at the sign, and that's enough. This has sold me books. I've sold The Advocator. I've even sold kids' books because there's humor in this. And this entire sign, and I've said this time and time again, this entire sign began because I was at a convention in Virginia and I was having people say some really nasty things. I'm a professional, so I don't fire back at people when people say things. I just, I used to just shrug it off and make a joke. Oh, I guess it's not for everybody. You try to roll with the punches. But it bothered me, and I was hating this convention. It was one of the worst I had ever been to. Still to this date, by the way. And I'm not going to say what convention it is because I don't think it's even around anymore. But they were really bad people. Well, not all of them, but just the particular ones I'd ran into. So I took one of those light up signs that were all the rage as of 2 years ago, and I'm sure they're not going to be that important anymore. And I took it what it said from support indie comics, and I changed the lettering around to say free hugs and spanks. And that's how it began. And I can't tell you how many people started stopping at my table. And it became a thing. And it became a drawing moment where people were like, that's cool. And they got excited about it. Something like this was, if you want to come in, Michael, you're welcome to come in.
Yeah, please do.
I put in the comment in the section. So, Michael, if you want to come in here and actually talk about that, it's an interesting question. I can send it to you directly, too. But it amazes me that when you're on social media, I have had people threaten to call Child Protective Services, have me arrested because of this. Forget freedom of speech. And I'll be honest with you, I actually looked at that person's profile and they were giving sexual tips to anyone on Facebook. Now, of course, Facebook has minors on it. So he was openly talking to people, and just for fun, I looked at some of the profiles, and I swear to you, one of them had to be a teenager. I don't know if she was past the 18 mark, but she was young. So it just goes to show you that people's comfort zones change with their perspective on something. He would openly give sexual tips to people I'm talking about his main profile, wasn't set to friends. This was a public thing. And because he had said something really nasty about calling like the police on me. So I started to look at who he really was. And because I knew him for a while and I knew he wasn't the best person in the world. So when I saw all this, it became very clear. This was just about him deciding something wasn't okay. And that always boggled my mind. Like Meredith, like you, I'm not too normal at all. I'm not even close to normal, let's be honest. I have, I have this unique ability to not care about the world around me too much, and you understand that, I'm sure. So I don't know. Why do you think people give me a perspective? Because I'm not going to get it as much as you might get it. Why do people have such a problem, I guess, with the idea of fetish and human sexuality? I just don't understand it.
I don't think that they actually do. I think because we play these roles when we're out in public, or even, you play a role when you are with your son. And I'm not saying that it's not you. It is you. It's a side of you. But you don't behave the same with your son as you would with your sister or with your parents or relatives or friends. So there's that. So in a way, we censor ourselves. But in the dark of night when we're by ourselves, if we were left to our own devices, how devious could we be? How nefarious? How sexualized are we? If if you were to ask the general public if they have some adult toys in the closet or in the drawer, they might not admit to having any. Some might, some people don't care, but a lot of people are like, that's none of your business, and they get all offended, like, how dare you think that of me, and I think that a lot of that is probably self-confidence in a way. If you're not talking about those things, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you as far as, I never went with my boys, and I don't want to embarrass them or anything like that. But when they were younger, they would sit there and they would masturbate. And I hope that this doesn't get canceled or anything like that. But it was one of those things and I knew that was an important moment because I caught them in the act, and I didn't want them feeling shame for their body. So I was just like, I don't care that you do that. Just don't do it in the living room. It was just one of those things. So maybe that's different because I remember, believe it or not, getting caught by my mother when I was little, like really little. It was just one of those things where it wasn't sex necessarily. It was just, it felt good for a child. All right. And I'm not talking pedophilia. I'm just talking your natural inclination is just like you're learning your world around you. And my mother made me feel ashamed of that, so it was just, as I grew up, I'm like, well, why? And I wanted to ask those questions. So, again, I think there's a time and place. I think that people are very private, but I don't think it's something that people are very comfortable talking about. And I think that comes with confidence.
Yeah, that I will respect. I mean, completely different. I mean, as a writer, I have different gears. I don't write everything about a fetish. I don't have things that I hide in or try to do things. I mean, Wonder Woman, he didn't even try to hide what he was putting in there, but he walked the line to keep it able to be seen by children. And he didn't push the line to a point where it would have been obscene. So everyone knows how to do that. But then you have people who literally just want to blindly attack. And I've never understood that America, because we're supposed to be the land of the free, unless you go all the way back to the Puritan idea, where people are so structured. I mean, we're all parents. We're all human beings. We're all someone who has real life. And like you said, there is that more sexual side of life. And then there's the non-sexual side of life. And we're exposing our children to Viagra commercials now. I mean, there are things that are shown on network television. I was thinking about that. Like when I grew up, I was watching Archie Bunker by the time I was 5. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was dealing with those things. And I think there's a way to always talk about things like, and I've always said this, because people have seen, well, your son's at the table. And I'm like, yeah. And by the way, I describe my book, I could describe it in front of a child on purpose because I don't want a child to ever feel invaded on. So I use words a child shouldn't know. Like if you say the word masturbation and a 6-year-old knows what masturbation is, the problem isn't that you said masturbation in front of them. It's that they know what it means. Mm-hmm. And you have to start to worry about, well, how did my child get exposed with that? But I mean, to what you were saying, I mean, you've read Barbara Unleashed. What did you think about it?
I honestly thought, I didn't know what to expect when I cracked the spine on that, because it's not something that I normally read, especially in comics. I mean, don't get me wrong. I write erotica. I mean, I get down and dirty when I write prose, but when faced with looking at Barbara Unleashed and actually holding it in my hands and turning the pages, I didn't know what to expect. And as I read through it and I saw the story for what it was a teaching moment. Be careful, be aware, understand what you're getting into. There's one thing to fantasize, and and wonder, what is it going to be like? But then when you get into a situation with that could be terribly, invasive, hurtful, abusive. Those are things that people don't talk about, and they really need to, because anybody who goes out there, whether it's a young woman or even a young man who goes out into the world, there are predators out there, and you have to be aware of what's out there and know the signs and protect yourself. And you do that with education. And so for me, after I read it, it really has stuck with me to the point where I have advocated for this book on multiple occasions, because it's thoughtful and informative. And I personally believe that it's an important book that people don't pay attention to because of the topic. And I think it scares them. And I don't think it should.
We're welcoming Michael, who's got a great question that I do want to. And he was like, when I sent him the message, he's like, I don't know how much I can talk with you guys about. I could see the red face while he was typing.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have too much to say, but some questions here, there. I figure try to engage some.
I appreciate that, but before we get to your question, it is a really good question. To Meredith's point, that's the funniest thing about my book. I have made this book that's actually been called a character study, a beautiful journey of a young woman, and I've even been told I'm surprised a man could write that. Flat out, more than once, I've been told by female fans of mine who literally said, "I can't believe you wrote this. Like, this is really good, and it really does engage in a whole different world that I wouldn't expect a man to understand." And I took that as a compliment, not as anything negative, because I also got to change the perception of maybe all males aren't the same. Maybe we aren't just all brutish and don't understand. Because I think that one of the things a lot of people don't know, and I've admitted this, and the point of the book is to stop abuse. And when you start talking about that, you change people's minds, because they're like, wait a minute, you would create a book about fetish to stop abuse? Oh, that's kind of weird. Well, talk to me about it more. But all the reviews that you get when people see the cover, which blows my mind. If I hadn't mentioned fetish and had her boobs hanging out, every guy would want to buy it. But the minute you talk about it being fetish, people are, oh, I don't know if I can. And some of it, I think, is like we were talking about. People want to have this face, and they want to act a certain way. And I don't really mind that, because I've had people like literally drop $20 on my table and say, I'll be back when my friends aren't around. Wrap it up for me. And it's been that. I've had people order it. But also, it's like when people start to lie about it. Like when people have reviewed my book and never read it. And I've had my friends blow them up and be like, there's no way you read his book, because that's nothing to do with what's inside his book. Because the first reviews, oh, all this sexual book. And they're like, there is no sex in his book. Oops. I mean, there's no sex whatsoever. What are you talking about? And those reviews get ripped down right away, and people take it down. But that's the point, I think, in America. And this goes back to human sexuality. We're afraid of it in America. For some reason, it has made this powerful thing that even now, I mean, after the Me Too movement, men and female don't know how to flirt anymore publicly. Men are, I'll admit it, as a single man, I'm a little intimidated to go up to a woman and somehow offend her with the 1 million ways I can offend her that if she liked me, I could get away with. And it's that one pivotal moment. If you can get a woman to lower their guard and really be cool, they'll enjoy anything that you can do within respectful bounds. But if they don't know you, something that might be funny if you were their friend suddenly gets thrown off. And it's a weird time we live in right now. And that all comes down to a little bit about redefining our roles, if we're being honest. Men and women are struggling with that right now. Our character roles, even our sexuality. Our sexuality has been challenged with the LGBTQ movement. Obviously, I support it. I'm a big fan of it, but it changed the landscape of what we even thought about human sexuality. And a lot of people had to come to grips with the fact that this wasn't some sort of choice that was evil and was going to condemn you to hell, but it was just part of the natural cycle of nature, which is something I always believed in. So go ahead, Mary.
Well, I was going to say, the fact that you wrote Barbara Unleashed, and anybody who read it and didn't have your name or didn't know who you were, anybody who's surprised by that, I don't think that they should be, because men, I mean, like, I've written in men's perspectives all the time, get in their mindset and stuff like that. Have I done well? Well, nobody's complained. The fact that you can do that actually tells me on a personal level, I mean, even if I didn't know you, it's like, you know what? There is a healthy respect for women. There's a healthy love for women and people to do the right thing, to come in and in whatever form that you can, to be a hero. And so I think that speaks volumes to your character as well, because this story came from your head. And again, so I'm throwing a little love at you, because I think it's well deserved. When you have that respect and you have that love for another human being, to say, you know what, this is a tale of caution. Please be careful. Because not everybody will go out and do the right thing. I can't even stress how important that is to me as a reader and as a woman who has been through some things in my own past. So it's just like one of those things where it's like, wow, I wish I had that when I was younger. And I also wanted to speak to the word fetish. I think people are uncomfortable with that word, maybe because they don't understand it.
Well, I mean, fetish was also a bad word just 20 years ago. In all fairness to people, it was considered. I mean, I want to get to Michael's question, but a real quick story. I was 11 when I first discovered I was going to have a fetish. And obviously, it was puberty setting in. Weird things were happening in my body. And there were ideas that made weird things happen in my body that were happening within comics. Very specific, the female heroine being tied up and being in distress like that. Aroused something in me. Let's put it that, well, not in me, on me. It aroused something on me. And I knew right away, but I went to the library, looked it up, and I found out I was going to be the Joker, because it was literally classified as the DSM as I was going to be a bad person going forward, because there was something wrong with me. It would take to the point that even now the DSM, while it doesn't list it as like something horribly wrong with you, it listed as a cautionary like problem with you instead of being part of sexuality. And it's confusing, even in the subculture and the community of fetish. Even deciding what parts are healthy or unhealthy can be arguments. Because there are people, to Meredith's, what she said, there are people who use it to hurt people. And then there are people who think BDSM is therapy. I've had a bad childhood. Let me go have someone beat me up because it'll make me feel better. It's not that simple. Therapists actually talk about doing BDSM because it teaches couples to have to communicate. That is the biggest thing with BDSM, and it's the most important thing, is you have to understand each other. There's a deepness to that relationship that you don't often see in a vanilla relationship. You do see it, but it's rare, because most times they have fantasies, and this is true if you look it up. Most couples have fantasies they will never explore with each other, and they wind up breaking up because of it, because they're afraid to actually tell someone, I want to do this. And it might be some crazy shit, but both of them might be into it. And sometimes you don't even know what you're into until you try it.
Yeah, I can imagine it. It's a huge level of trust that has to be given there from both ends.
Oh, yeah.
For that kind of thing.
Yeah. And just the vulnerability to say, I want this, or I really like this, or, hey, do you want to try this? And to be vulnerable to a no, especially with that, would be probably a lot more devistating.
When we get back from this, because I'm going to let Michael ask this question next. It's a great question. I don't want to go too far away from it. But ask me about how I set up my dating apps. I recently got yelled at about the things that I put on my dating app. And we'll talk about that, because it's actually part of this conversation. But Michael, I'm going to put you up on the big screen. Ask the question. It's an important one.
Yeah, I was just wondering what kind of blowback or comments do you get from the feminist culture that's out there now? You have your feminist culture that would either see you binding up a woman on a cover of a comic book as being something as possessive, and you also have the opposite of that, where they could see that as female empowerment. And I'm curious of what you get mostly. I'm sure you've heard something here or there.
Few things. First, my covers have never had anyone bound. The trade will have her on a cross, but a lot of times you can't even tell she's bound unless you know what you're looking at.
Right. Okay.
It's a really powerful. So I don't actually have those. We, of course, have had art that showed some of it. Like you can see Barbara right there tied up. She's on the back of the cover that way. So there are moments, but it's never been anything too gratuitous on our covers on purpose. I always wanted this to be an inviting book. The second series will be a lot more sexual in nature, so we'll have a lot more way to make covers. But by then, you'll have fallen in love with the character, and it'll make sense because you'll understand she's part of this community. It's not just me taking this hot blonde and making her naked, so you'll buy a cover. And to be honest with you, I don't know if I'll ever make her nude on a cover of a magazine, of a comic book, because I have too much respect. This is a real person. I mean, as a writer, and you guys are all creators in this room, you know it. You create someone, they're your family.
Yeah.
That's why I look down on people who slut out their characters. Now, if your character's slutty, like, perfect example, Belial. Belial just successfully funded. Congratulations to our friend Chuck. Did a great job. He was talking to me about a cheesecake cover, and he's like, I did a cheesecake cover, and he knew I didn't like him, and I'm like, why didn't you do a dozen? You're talking about hell. You can literally make that all day, and it fits. It's not out of place.
It's in context, yeah.
I was like, the context is right, but when you have like, this is a princess who is trying to save her kingdom, and then she's like trying to lick her own boob on the cover, you're like, what? Why is she showering someone in public that has nothing to do with her story, but isn't a crossover story with a different character? Why would you do that to your characters? And that's where people lose me.
Yeah.
The feminist thing. I consider myself a feminist. For the record, feminists believe in equality. Mm-hmm. That is what feminists want. And I have a big problem. And this comes down to dating too. And I've gotten in trouble from this. My friends go, well, the girl wanted you to come over and talk to her. I'm like, well, why didn't she come over and talk to me? Well, Rob, that's not how it is. And I get stuck in my own way, and I own it. But the Me Too movement, I think women should have taken a lot more assertiveness for men to help men not feel this way. Because let's be honest, and this is going to, I promise this ties into the question. Women play cat and mouse with men when it comes to dating. Men don't, we have to, it's a game. And I even got told, remember the dating app? I got told that I have to do things to not really hide who I am, but to show my best face, because that's how you should start this. So it's not that you're lying, but you're just hiding all the things about you and just putting in a picture with you on a tie. Not that I don't mind wearing a tie. I almost wore a tie tonight for this, but the shirt was very centric to tonight's conversation. But so, I mean, even on your dating apps, we're kind of lying about who we are and all that stuff. So I'm a feminist. I believe in equality. But you see this inequality between men and women still to this date. A lot of women are afraid to approach men because of what? Rejection? But then they get weird about guys who go up to them, and then it's just so complicated. Again, we're hitting the mess. So when I do get the blowback from a quote-unquote feminist, and it's usually feminists who wear flannel T-shirts, and I'm not picking on anyone. I swear to you, this literally happened to me at New York Comic Con. The only negative experience I had someone come up to me who had very short hair, presented as a woman, because I know in 2020 I can't assume, but presented as a woman and asked me who wrote the book. And I said, I did. They giggled and ran away. I thought that was odd. Next day, that person brings another person. By the end of the weekend at New York Comic Con, 5 of them had come up to the table and been like, who wrote that? And finally, by the 5th one, I turned around and said, a man wrote it, and it's my love letter to the fetish community, and it's actually respectful. One of the persons stepped up, bought the book, and later sent me an email and said it was great, and she apologized for her friends. They all wore plaid T-shirts. I mean, the plaid thing, and they all look like, I mean, in 1990s, if you were going to have a lesbian on your show, this is how the lesbian would have been presented to the viewing audience. So I thought it was funny they were wearing the same uniform. I didn't know if they were trying to have a go at me. I'm like, are you guys like doing something here? Like, am I on punked? But that young woman was amazing. She wrote me an email, told me how beautiful the story was. And I get that a lot. A lot of people, I've been at a show, sold someone a comic book, and they come back to me. I've had people cry in my arms. I've had people, and it was not because it was bad, I swear. I had people cry in my arms. I had people thank me because on our whole second issue, we talk about abuse. And I've even, to the feminist thing, when we were promoting the second book about abuse, they're like, oh, so you have one issue about abuse and that's it? And I'm like, no, I'm a writer. That means if something happened here, it's going to continue throughout the entire series. There are going to be moments where this moment's going to matter. I was like, but when you go through something really shitty, doesn't it consume your life for a little while? And they were like, yeah. And I'm like, so why wouldn't this consume the character for an entire issue? And they were like, oh. And sometimes we forget how deep life can be. Comic books, even still, look at LGBTQ. A lot of credit for them punching through barriers using content in entertainment, whether it be a television show, a comic book, a news program, a movie. All those little times that they started to creep in and show you their humanity started to change people's minds. The fact that people fell in love with Will and Grace as a TV show, you definitely helped open the doors. Queer Eye for the straight guy, the L Word, which every guy tuned in for the wrong reasons. Absolutely the wrong reasons, but might have actually turned around and been like, wow, I never looked at life this way. And that's what these powerful stories can be. But then you get people who go on the internet who get mad. And like you said, the feminists, and when you said that, I'm sure you never thought about me being a feminist, because a lot of people don't assume.
But there's feminism in the sense that you're talking about equality. And then there's dominance. And you find that a lot where for someone who's me, you get, I'm trash. I'm a white male, straight male. So I'm, I guess what I'm saying, like, they're not really feminists in the sense, because I believe in equality in that sense too. But
I call them. I'll say
please.
it. I'll say it. I call them the feminazis.
Yeah,
they're the ones.
I don't the feminine, but I've heard that one too. But yeah, I'm the same way.
They are the ones who think all men are bad. And from my perspective, I gave birth to 3 boys. All right, I have a husband that I adore. My dad was not a perfect guy, but he was my perfect dad. And, so there is nothing in my world that would say that all men are bad. It just doesn't exist in my world. And so when I hear women tearing people down and saying, oh, I yelled at a guy for opening the door for me, I'm like, bitch, you're ruining it for me. I don't like it. I don't like it. I mean, that is not feminism. That is rude.
And we have to, as human beings, we have to realize we're the standard. So when someone does that, you have to stand up to them. I mean, when I was younger, I would egg them on. I'll be honest. When one of those feminazi people would come to me about stupid things, I'd be like, you know why I'm right? And they would get all, what makes you right? I'm like, I'm a man and I have a penis. That's why I'm right. And it would just piss them off. But that was never the right road. It got me a giggle. It got things. What really happened is I turned around and said, when did I stop being a human? And when you make someone acknowledge that moment, they're like, what do you mean? I was like, you have disintegrated me after a decade, 2 decades now, fighting about we're all humans and we don't always choose our body parts. And we're supposed to accept that. Like Michael said, oh, you're just a middle-aged white guy who's straight. What do you know? Right. I know a lot, because it turns out that in the 80s and the 90s, when being gay sounded like tag because suddenly you could get it, because that's the generation I grew up in. Like, you were going to catch it. You were going to go to the bathroom, wash your hands at the wrong place. Oh, I'm gay. I can't solve it anymore. You literally grew up not knowing when the gay was going to hit you, to being one of the first person who actually stood up, actually went and protested and was very out and about not just having a fetish, but being okay. I literally was saying in the 90s, I wish I was born bisexual. Look at all the choices I could have. There's all these cute guys always hitting on me. And all my friends are like, you're the F word. I won't say it on the show, but you're that. And I'd be like, why, honey? You need something sucked? And it made these men so uncomfortable. But again, it was because I did it the wrong way back then. And now I know when that conversation happens, I go, when did they stop being human? What about the mixed men? I'm not going to get into the whole religious aspect, because I know people get hung up on that. I'm just going to say, growing up, I was told I had to eat fish on Fridays because I didn't know why. And when I asked priests that, I didn't get a straight answer.
No.
And for anyone who's history buff, the reason we ate fish on Friday was to help the fishing industry. The Pope did it on purpose to make sure that the fishermen could wind up getting more money. So when it came to religion, I kind of tuned out a lot of that. Not saying religion's not important. I'm a very spiritual person. I'm just saying you can't always go by that. Some of it you have to like literally look inside yourself and go, why would Jesus hate someone who sucks a dick?
Well,
Let's be honest. Like, why? He doesn't hate the whore. He's literally hanging out with a whore. This guy doesn't have a problem with dick sucking. I'm telling you right now. And then back then, it would have been such dirty. Like, they didn't shower right. Just about, the flavors. Look at Michael. Michael doesn't.
Because let me say something. Because I will say it real quick. I'm a Christian. However, I blame Christian right-wing conservatism of the 80s for causing the cancel culture that we have today. It was because the Bible specifically tells followers of Christ to preach him, not preach a lifestyle, not preach what you're supposed to do, and not to correct everything. The world's going to be the world. But as a Christian, you are to preach Jesus Christ saves. But that's not what they were doing. They were trying to make everybody into what they think they should have been. They were trying. Barney is gay. Tinky Winky, they're trying to infiltrate your children. Just complete nonsense. And then that's now one group I cannot stand, and I've actually known members of it, is and forgive me if anybody's watching, but Millions Moms. Constantly, every time something turns around that they disagree with, they want to have a petition, a boycott, and a march. Leave it alone. Leave it alone. It doesn't affect you.
Well,
it doesn't affect you.
You know what 2020 taught people? These people don't have any power. That's why the cancel culture suddenly is losing so much energy. Because now people are like, fuck it. I did it. Don't care. I moved on. I mean, go ahead. Be mad. Yeah. Be fucking mad. I don't care anymore. We've literally gotten to and I think that's a healthy place to be.
Yep.
If you're going to call someone out for something they did 20 years ago and not see the person in front of you, you're missing the point of life.
Yep.
You're supposed to be a shithead 20 years ago. I'm 42. And I'm just becoming an okay human being that I'm okay with. And it took me a lot of time, a lot of work, a lot of energy to become someone I consider to be a good human being. And I can say that for the first time in my life. A lot has to do with my son being a parent, seeing the world differently, but being open-minded. I don't hate people. I don't give a shit what dangly parts you have. I don't care who sticks what in you unless I'm involved. Then we have to negotiate. But seriously, beyond all that, it doesn't matter to me, but it's how you treat me. Yeah. When you tell me, like, if I call you a woman and you're not a woman, but you're a transgender and I got a mistake and you're trying to say I was doing hate speech or I'm transphobic. No, you didn't know. Like, I mean, sometimes it's hard to tell. And if you were a guy who switched to a woman, shouldn't you be happy that I think you're a woman? Like, I mean, wasn't that the goal? Wasn't that Operation Success? Or pronouns. I don't mean to step on anyone. I'm just not going to learn everyone's pronouns. I called Meredith Martha, apparently for 6 months of knowing her. And I finally one day just switched over. And she's like, yeah, you did that for a while. And I was like, why didn't you say anything? She's like, yeah, it didn't bother me.
She knew who you were talking about. Well,
So you're talking to me? Oh, maybe you actually were thinking about Martha. Go somewhere else.
And to kind of put some stuff.
I don't want to hear your problems.
Honestly, and there's, of course, I'm not going to come from a perspective of understanding this completely because I'm not in that said culture. However, I lived with a person who was transgender for a little while. I was dating their daughter, and you could the amount of confusion that person goes through. You when they can identify with somebody, I can understand that. Let me put it that way. And that was a very close friend of mine that ended up committing suicide, but.
Sorry.
Well, it's been some years now, but you see that kind of thing. You see the confusion that they go through, so you can understand when they're reaching out for somebody to understand who they are.
And you want to do that, but that's that human moment that I'm talking about. We let these things like these pronouns get in the way of connecting with each other. You didn't call me the right pronoun. I grew up in the 80s. We ate lead paint. You're gonna have to. We were having asbestos with lunch. You're going to have to slow down. The intelligence level is no longer there thanks to, all the hormones they put in the food I've eaten over my lifetime. The FDA just started paying attention 10 years ago. We're screwed at my age. You're gonna have to slow it down. Pronouns is too much for us. Give us your name. Give us your name, because I'll accept anyone. You could come up to me and tell me that, and I have this in the fetish community. I'm a cat inside. Okay, cool. Don't care. Are you hurting anyone? No. But if you're a cat inside, don't come running up to me and making me try to pet you if that's not where my comfort is. And I have this one problem to the feminist thing, and I'll say this. In the BDSM culture, there's this idea that when you're a submissive or a slave, you're not allowed to speak to that submissive or slave without asking their dominant first. And I get very mad at this because it's only with women. I've never seen anyone go, that's my submissive male over there. How dare you speak to them? It has never happened. It's always with a woman. And I had one guy come up to me and go, how, you shouldn't be talking to her without my permission. I'm like, let me ask you something, buddy. Who the fuck are you to me? And he was like, what? I was like, seriously, who are you to me? When did you start deciding you had more say over my actions than I did? She could have told me to fuck off, and I would have fucked off. I was like, you don't get to come over here and tell me who she gets to speak to. That's between me and her. She has every right to tell me I'm an idiot and walk away. I was like, but you don't have that right to come over and tell another human being who they're allowed to speak to in front of me. Maybe in your own relationship, you can snap your fingers and she'll come running away, but you don't get to put that on me. You got to put that on her. I was like, don't ever do that. And I've always had a problem since that point in my life. And this was literally a woman who came up and just at the time I was a smoker. She asked me for a cigarette. I gave her a cigarette. And we were talking about taxi cabs of all things. And he came off like, and I was a little thin white guy. Like now I'm this like little bit bigger guy who people cross streets over. No, this was back when I was like 20-year-old. Like, if I came out of the shower, I probably weighed more at that point than before because the wetness in my long hair was giving me a couple pounds. But I still had the same attitude and voice, and I just couldn't believe it. So you see that, and I do understand when feminists look at the culture, it's always a woman tied up. That's not true in the real culture, but it is. There's always a woman, and you hear about it, women getting abused. Absolutely true. You have these older men, and I'm older now, and I have this like double-edged sword where, yeah, I'm 42, but I'm really just a 20-year-old inside. I've just made it to 20, so I might be dating some 20-year-olds coming up because we're on the same maturity level. It's just how it happens. But there is that thing, and I've dated a girl where at a function she felt uncomfortable because she realized the age difference between me and her, and I don't see that. So there's a lot that goes into our culture. What is seriously wrong with a 40-year-old dating a 20-year-old? Well, right now, 20-year-olds turn around and say they're being taken advantage of. I know a lot of 16-year-old girls who are doing a lot they shouldn't have been doing with older guys, and they like the power of doing it with older guys. Billie Eilish did the song "Bad Guy." She's underage when she was writing that, so 2 and 2 together, she's probably doing some stuff with some older guys she shouldn't probably be doing. This is part of our culture. We struggle even with the idea of what the consent age is. 50 states do not agree across the board what age you're allowed to start having sex and who can have sex with who. It's a difficult thing. And we don't have these conversations. And I'm not suggesting that we make the age any lower. I think you should make a universal age like they have in other countries. I think 18, once they're out of high school, should be the bare minimum. But I'd even go as far as being 18 being okay only if you're in with like 4 or 5 years. Because I do think that you should be able to old enough to drink to be able to have sex with a 40-year-old. Because I don't think an 18-year-old and a 40-year-old should be interacting in that way. Like, I look at 18-year-olds now, like, when you do that thing and you're looking at them like, they look young, but are they young? And then you start talking to them, so you start asking them questions. And when I start realizing the numbers go into where they're in college and stuff, because it's easy to ask, oh, so what degree did you get? Oh, I'm in college for this. Oh, yeah, what year are you in? And then I've been in for a couple of years. All right, so what'd you grow up reading? So you're trying to hit the 21-year. Did you go to bars? Yeah, my friend gets me in. Ooh, that's a hard one. That's a hard one. I don't know now. Like that might be. But you do this because you're trying. We're ultimately trying to. Most of us are trying to be really good people. But there is the society thing. Like, we're so confused in America about everything. I mean, I'll give it to you, and Meredith knows about this. So here we go. This was something I had the other day. I'm dealing with a hurricane, and I get this. I get a program from April 17th has just been reported. I am now have a violation on Facebook for this. What for? it was the same conversation we're having right now. Basically, the same things we're talking about. I didn't even show any art, same as I'm not showing much today. And I got flagged because someone got offended. Meanwhile, look at Facebook right now. This is your priority? The things being said to each other, and this is where you're at right now, Facebook. So I stepped in and I disputed it, and they reversed it right away. They reversed it right as soon as the human beings saw it. Because Facebook, so you guys know, the minute something gets reported, they more likely will now just take it down. It's easier to just take it down if a person reports it. And this was so out of the blue, I'm sure someone was like, oh, we must have missed this. So, and of course, in the title, it says sex, sexuality, fetish, and comics. Why is that something we can't talk about? I mean, I don't think I've said anything on this program that wouldn't be said on any show that was more adult. And if you don't know that this was an adult program, then you didn't read the Fetish Friday thing and really understand it. Like, if you're like telling your like 12-year-old daughter, oh no, that looks like a good program for you, that's not for me. You're supposed to be monitoring your teenagers. And if you're a 16-year-old acting like an 18-year-old, I've been there and I understand you. Because I think we all want to act older. And someone had actually asked me, can I make my book into a book that teenagers could read? And I actually started to try to figure out how I can convert my books into an all ages, not all ages, of course, like a teen, the teen demographic they have now. I think it's like 16 and up, because we have to stop denying that our teenagers are having sex, and we have to start talking to them about safe sex. Don't teach junior high about sex, you idiots. That's way too young. You teach them in high school around 15, 16, the average age when people are starting to have sex, and you explain some things. Because let me tell you, puberty doesn't care what age you are. It drops on some things to you that just, I mean, I know people have foot fetishes and they know how to express it. And we have to get to that point. Again, stop putting the roadblocks between us having honest conversations with people, even teenagers, who are going to have sex no matter how much you tell them not to. They're going to do it. That's what teenagers do. Remember when you were a teenager? You found ways, didn't you? I know I did.
I think it's amazing, though, that this got flagged. I get friend requests from, I'm sure you've gotten it too, from the woman or whatever the case is, and they've got pictures on their Facebook, because you kind of look at the profile just to see if this is a real person or is this a, spam. Mm-hmm. And the pictures that they have, I'm surprised that they can have on Facebook in the first place, and you got flagged for that?
Well, that's because I mentioned certain trigger words. I've had people, well, you asked for it. You mentioned fetish. Why do you have to do that? When I made the choice to make a fetish book, it was like I had to choose to no longer be just a human. Like I had to become like part Klingon. From now on, I'm part Klingon because he's into fetish. You know that Rob guy, he's part Klingon. It's just like, what the fuck? Like, seriously, like, your wife was buying my book just so you might be getting freaky shit. And then the whole, well, your art affects kids. I don't show any nudity, and you've both been to cons, and we all know this. There are people who hang up nudity. There are people, I mean, what about the freaking cosplayers who there's nothing left to the imagination. Mm-hmm. Trust me, I'm trying to imagine to put clothes on them. There's literally some cosplayers where it's like, ooh, imagine her in a suit. There's nothing left. You have to go the other way.
It's like something I saw the other day. I'm getting to that age now where people are, I can feel people dressing me with their eyes. So,
like cosplayers, so the dating app, real quick. So in the dating app, I have pictures of myself with this shirt on at the gym, flexing when I'm done, because I'm pretty proud of myself. And my friend is like, "What are you doing, Rob? You look like you're on steroids." He's like, "Have you read what you wrote?" And I'm like, "No. What are you talking about?" He's like, "It has your website to your fetish book." I'm like, "Yeah." It says you're into fetish right away. I'm like, "So is that not true?" And you write comic books. I'm like, "Okay." You don't see it, do you? You're like Peter Pan, but freaky. Like, stop it. Stop being freaky Peter Pan on your dating things. It's like you don't use it for advertising. And I'm like, but I was like, but like, that's who I am. Like, yeah, but you don't. He's like, look, do you ever like start talking to anyone and go, hey, I like to have my, my penis sucked. Is that how you start conversations with any woman? I'm like, no, that's kind of creepy. He's like, do you send dick pics? And I'm like, no. He's like, kind of putting the fetish thing out so hard might be close, not the same, but close, because they might just think that you want to do this, and you haven't explained that you're this creator and you understand it, and you made a BDSM survey. All of that's the shit you're supposed to get to know after. It's like, put on a fucking tie, put on a nice shirt, act like you can be a fucking human being for 10 minutes, and you'll probably do better on the dating sites. Let me guess, you got some winners so far. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, you know what I mean. You know exactly what I mean. You've had to change your number already, haven't you? But the crazy ones are always the most fun. All right, guys, thank you for being on the show tonight. We have something coming up right now. Meredith said it was Essence House. So
Essence House with Chuck Pinot.
Are you running over to do that right now?
Nope. They have their own show going. So if you guys are tuning in, it is the end of Indie Event. Essence House is finishing up. I believe that they are going to share some of the stories that are coming out with the book that they are crowdfunding. So definitely give them some love. If you go over to the Geek Insider YouTube channel, you will see the playlist there at the very bottom of the playlist, CRYPT Week 2020. And make sure you head over there and give them a subscribe, a like, a share, and give them some love. At the same time, while you're at the playlist, check out Rob's YouTube channel as well. Give that a like, share, and subscribe as well.
And just as a heads up, Chuck's actually the editor of Barbara Unleashed. And he's got some amazing tales about having to learn things he didn't expect to learn. And like, I got this close to bringing him to a dungeon when we were in Orlando. I'll get him in one yet. And I'll let your imagination wonder what we're going to do. We're out. Thanks for being part of the CRYPT Week. And we're going to pass it over to Essence House. Thank you, Michael, for being on. And Meredith, thank you.
Where'd he disappear to? On that note, you guys, there he comes.
Every so often when I end the program, it just kicks me out, and I'm like,
I think this thing is still going. So that's why I was just like, oh, should I hit the button?
I feel like dance something.
I feel like throwing ground with the football. Good night, guys. Good night.